Let's get on it, folks. It's Friday, and we're about to cap the week off with today's Sportsline podcast on CHCH. Thank you so much for the amazing feedback regarding this week's show. Like it's really making me happy. It's making the team happy. It's motivating us, and we're going to keep working hard for you, folks, to produce some good content for you. Today on the pod, it's a former colleague that's excelled in sports television, but more importantly, he's making a difference for the mental aspects of our lives. When he followed his dreams with a move from Halifax to Toronto, his career was first and foremost Paul Bromby's talent as an entry-level broadcast associate at Sportsnet were quickly recognized, and he maneuvered through the patient path from associate to senior producer. Yet, through life tragedy, Paul made it known that he needed to get in touch with himself, and we will uncover what has made him such an outstanding employee, father, and person right down to the core. Paul Bromby, this is a treat. Like, this is the best thing I could possibly think of. Someone that I've known for well over 2 decades, and having an opportunity to join you here on the podcast, it just means a lot to me here.
Oh, it means a lot to me as well, Bubs. As we were talking before we get on air here, just the growth and where we started and where we've gone is incredible, and I'm proud of you. I know when we worked in the newsroom, you had aspirations of being on air, and you've been doing it for a long time now and doing it awesome, really. And again, proud of you, and it's really cool to join you. Like you said, who would have thought 20 plus years ago that we'd be doing this?
Isn't it crazy when you think about to those days at Sportsnet, and we were young guys in a young network, you know, with a fearless leader in the likes of a Scott Moore that were like, we're going to be number one day. And we were so motivated, and it wasn't just the two of us. We had this amazing group of people that were so multi-talented to make that network something really, really special in those days.
I agree. And, you know, you always see the people on air, but I think behind the scenes, like you said, in that newsroom, we were so full of talented people. A guy like Kevin Foley comes to mind, a mutual friend of ours who's gone on to do great things. Married Cheryl Hickey, so he's outkicked his coverage, as we'd say in football. But no, the behind the scenes is really the cool part, you know, because you have a part in the creative, you know, where you're moving forward with stories and storytelling, and just those days I was just trying to soak up as much knowledge and learn as much as I could from people like yourself, from other people that have been in the industry, because I just started entry level. I knew a lot about sports. I was a bit of a sports junkie, and people in that newsroom taught me television, and I've taken that for 25 years now in my career and tried to share that knowledge and, you know, be that kind of leader in the newsroom that we had back then.
You talk about leadership, and I think a lot of that leadership that I always noticed in you came from your love of basketball. And basketball was something that was really, really important to you in your early years, even before getting to the net. Absolutely. I mean, and we'll get to this in a bit, but basketball kind of became my sanctuary, my safe place, my escape from a lot of things that I was going through in life. My mom was living with bipolar disorder, also had an alcoholic father in the home. So there was a lot going on at a young age, and basketball really was my escape. I said this before, but coaches became my role models, my father figures, teammates became my brothers. And it was just a safe place for me to go and escape from everything that was going on. So when I left, or when I graduated from university at St. Mary's in Halifax, I just really missed being part of a team. And I think that's what I was looking for in a career. I did sales for a friend, and it was just, you know, there was 1 or 2 of us in the office. It was really difficult at times. I just felt like I needed a bigger environment. And Stu Aker, a mutual friend of ours and mentor, hired me entry level and said, you know enough about sports and we could teach you the television side. I would go into my days off. I would go into master. I'd go into the control room and shadow as many positions and things that people were doing just to soak up that knowledge and learn from some really great producers. Jeff McDonald's, actually Trevor Party back then, who's at CBC now. I learned a lot from him, a lot of mutual people, Mike English, just some great people that had been in the business a long time. And I was very lucky to have that environment. You know, and I think we can't understate this, and it's only till meeting someone like yourself and a couple other people along my travels where, you know, making that move from Halifax to Toronto, that's a big deal, and it's hard, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I grew up in Halifax, so I was very comfortable in Halifax. Went to two elementary schools, two high schools, and two universities. I talk a lot about St. Mary's, but I played at Mount St. Vincent University as well. But I was very comfortable in Halifax, knew a lot of people there, worked at the Halifax Metro Center my whole life. But I just had this desire, there's something in my gut telling me I had to move away. So I really packed all my stuff into a van. Couple of friends and roommates, Brent Taylor, a roommate, just drove up to Toronto with me and had an apartment with another friend and just started working and started trying to build a life and a career. In a lot of ways, that's probably the best thing for me, because as soon as you leave that nest, you leave that safe place, you grow. And a lot of things in life, once you get out of that safety net and out of that safe place, that's where the real growth happens. And I think for me, moving to Toronto was needed. But it really helped me, and it really helped me grow. And I still played some men's basketball, and a lot of the connections that I played with in the university here, and that helped as well. A guy named Titus Channer and I became really good friends. People might know him in the Hamilton area.
Yeah,
Hamilton, a McMaster legend. He's actually uncle to my son Austin now. But we started playing basketball together. He started a New Horizon Basketball Academy that I was the lead coach at, or still am, and just was able to still have those basketball roots, but bring them here to Ontario and teach some of the things that I'd been taught by some of the great coaches and that I had, Nick Morash, Hugh McDonald, Rick Plato is at Dow now, and Ross Quackenbush. So it's been really cool to take a lot of their philosophies and a lot of their teachings and teaching young kids, including my son, who doesn't listen to me, but does listen to Uncle T.
So we're about 2010 right now, and I leave for CHCH and get the opportunity of a lifetime. And you were an associate producer at Sportsnet, same level where I was at. And all of a sudden, I would get the little information from other people that were there, hearing from you as well too. You move on from there. You're at Hockey Central, and then you get into this position. Just talk to me about that path, because for people that don't know, that's a real big leap from associate producer to Hockey Central, where there's some big personalities, and you're sitting in that chair. A lot of pressure.
I think you would understand it very well, Bubs, that Hockey Central and that hockey department had some huge, big personalities. Darren Millard, Nick Kiprios, Doug McLean. And I think a big part of why I was brought into that was just for leadership ability, and I wasn't afraid I wouldn't back down from them. I knew television. I was confident as a producer. They knew hockey. And so I thought my job was to put them in positions to succeed discussing hockey, and also making sure that they weren't steamrolling me in the control room and taking us off the rails and telling stories about how Doug has a Lexus. So it really was a fish out of water, though, for dealing with hockey. There were some nuances and things I really had to learn. John Shannon, I worked with John Shannon early, who is, if you talk about television, and he'll love to hear this, but he's like a Wayne Gretzky of hockey and television.
He is.
And he really helped. I don't want to say mentor. He more shaped me in a way, but was really helpful in my career. And then we ended up getting the national rights and went from doing regional hockey and Hockey Central to really being thrown into the deep end and working on such huge properties as Hockey Night in Canada and the outdoor game and the All-Star games, and had the privilege of producing, pre-game shows for Hockey Night in Canada. One of the coolest experiences of my life was that first Hockey Night in Canada show, and Ron gave me a little bit a run for my money that day, but at the end of the day, I think I earned his respect. And after we got off air, once they went to puck drop, the control room gave me a round of applause. And I just felt like, oh, it's over, thank God. But I also felt like I took a huge jump and really gained confidence from working in that CBC and Hockey Night environment. Shirley Najak, absolute legend, produced a Stanley Cup final for about 25 years. Brian Spear, they both really, went out of their way to help me and mentor me and teach me things that I thought I had known, but really didn't know.
And you know what? You just dropped some great names there in our television business, and many again still are in those positions and doing great things. And you're right. It is about sharing experiences. It's about talking to each other, being sometimes friends with each other on and off the court kind of thing. But you had some incredible duties, and I think about a time which. I thought I knew you, right? I thought I knew you really, really well. And we used to, have some great times as employees and colleagues together at Sportsnet. And when I had left, and we were still, messaging each other on social media. But one day you dropped a message on Facebook about your mom, and it was a sort of a long form letter that you kind of just wrote. And I don't know if it were, I don't know, and you can explain to me if you were just brainstorming or you let it all go. And it changed my thoughts about you forever. And I think many of your friends and people close to you. Can you describe what that was all about?
Sure. I mean, I mentioned earlier, but my mom was bipolar, or grew up with bipolar manic depression. And had, a lot of issues and trouble dealing with that. And I buried it. I didn't talk about it. I hid it from my friends. I hid it from a lot of people, my teammates. And I think when she passed, something freed me to be able to talk about it. And I know that probably sounds bad, but I felt actually for her that she was also free from the illness. And so I didn't want people to live the way I lived and be embarrassed and ashamed of the illness, because, if my mom had cancer or had passed from a heart attack, people would have empathy, people would have understanding. And so I don't think people still to this day have as much understanding and empathy about mental health and mental illness as we should. And I just wanted to be her voice. I thought, she didn't really have a voice and I didn't use my voice at all. I was embarrassed and ashamed of the illness. And so when she passed, I just figured, take the social media and pour my heart out. And it wasn't easy. I still had that shame and stigma, attached to me, really. And I couldn't talk about it openly. But I think over the years and being able to talk about it and campaigns like Bell Let's Talk, sure, you can trash the company and you can get upset that they have mass layoffs every year. And I get that and you get that. But the campaign Bell Let's Talk is so important in what we've done to try to help end the stigma. And I always use my voice on that day, and I'm very proud of using my voice now, but it's not always easy. And I think, but I think with leadership comes vulnerability. And I think anybody that shows their vulnerability and is open and vulnerable, then they can become a leader in whatever field they choose. And I just happen to have that experience growing up with my mom's illness, that I figured I would use my voice. By no means am I a mental health expert, but I do have the experience and growing up around it. And I wanted to do something to help end the stigma. And I thought using my voice was the way.
I remember that letter so well, like it just stuck with me, and it still does to this day. And you sitting there on the East Coast, sitting on a rock, looking out at the Atlantic Ocean. When you wrote that letter, was it freeing to you?
So my Aunt Karen called and my mom's sister and told me that my mom had passed, or she was basically on life support. And so I had to fly back to Halifax. And the whole way, all I could think of was, how can I honor my mom and tell the world how amazing she was? I think I had defined her in a lot of ways by the negative side and the resentment towards the illness. And so I wanted to write something. So I went to Peggys Cove. That picture is at Peggys Cove. And I wrote her eulogy sitting on that rock at Peggys Cove. And I think it was the best place I could have ever gone, because I think if you've ever been to Peggys Cove in Halifax, you feel like you're like a speck. It's so overwhelming and overpowering with the waves, and you're just part of the world there that just feels so centering. So I was able to search my soul, find the right words to describe my mom to the world, and explain that she was a beautiful person, a great mom, the best mom I could have ever had. And, since then, I think I talk about my mom all the time on social media, but I just feel like, she's gone, and I wish she was still here. And it also, for me, is a reminder to people that still have their moms here, that don't take them for granted. They're not always going to be here. We think our parents are always going to be here our whole lives and that they're superheroes, but they're not always going to be here. And we should treat them with respect and tell them how much we love them while they're here.
So true. So true. So somehow the impetus, the feelings, the mental aspect of what you went through gets you into, I guess, a frame of mind where you want to write a book? Like, where did this all come from?
I think sometimes I surprise myself. I just thought a lot of times I was, putting things on social media, and the reactions I would get and the private messages were really incredible. People still felt like they couldn't be open about it. And if it was themselves or parents or brothers and sisters, that they still couldn't be open about it. And so they would reach out to me and we would have conversations. And I thought first maybe a documentary. And then I was like, you know what? I think if we're going to make change, we should get to the grassroots. And the grassroots are children, and that's the future. And so if we normalize mental health and mental illness at a young age, and we have those discussions, they're not comfortable. It's a heavy subject. It's a heavy topic. But if we talk about it and normalize it at a young age, I thought that could actually have some influence and make a difference. And so I met Jason DeRocha at Sport Ball. It's a great program that he was part of. And one of the coaches said, Jason's written a children's book. And so we met and we brainstormed. In hindsight, he said now, he's like, I didn't know how I was going to tell a story about your story and make a children's book out of it. But I think we've done a really good job of taking my struggles and my experiences as a child and making it into a relatable story to help not only children, but parents open those conversations about mental health and mental illness in the home and normalize it. This is us signing books here. We signed 500 pre-order copies. We're almost out of them now, but it's just been so rewarding for me to hear people share their stories, and really the amazing amount of support I've received from friends and family, co-workers like Ken Reed. And shout out to Nova Scotia. I mean, I think of the 500 orders, like 400 of the orders are from Nova Scotia. So the people that supported me growing up and really didn't know my story because I hid it have been really helpful in sharing the story and creating awareness and hoping to get it into as many schools, as many programs, places like CAMH, the Nova Scotia Hospital, where my mom was a patient, very similar to CAMH. She was a long-term resident there in her last 4 or 5 years. But I think if the book can be used as a tool to open those conversations, and so it doesn't feel heavy, it ends the stigma, and we can just talk about it normally and not feel the shame and embarrassment of mental illness.
I love the fact that, you thought about that in that sense, that to hit the young kids that are out there. I mean, it's one thing, and maybe I'm being old man Charlie here, but I look at the time of life and the era of the world of what it's like when we grow up, and I just feel like it's real tough for kids right now. There's just so much coming at them that we never had to face, and I think you're right that the getting in touch with yourself from a mental aspect is so much more important and difficult for kids nowadays, and just on top of that too, Paul, you tied it back into basketball. That's the best part for you and I as a sports people.
Well, it was the two things I knew best. I knew my mom and I knew basketball, and I really just wanted to make a relatable story. And basketball in Canada it's always been huge in the basketball community, but I think the Raptors took it to another level and grew the game. But I wanted to share my story and make it relatable. I think you hit on something very important is we didn't have social media. We went out and played. And, some people started playing video games at a young age, that's as well, but we didn't have all the pressures that we had to be perfect. And, I'm as guilty as anybody. It's not like I post my bad days on Facebook or Instagram or X. I try to post positive things, but kids have a lot different pressures than we do, or we did, to be great, to have this perfect life, to look a certain way. And if anything, I think me sharing that I struggled, like I really struggled. I still struggle. We all do. But I have the wherewithal to get out of those struggles. And when I start to feel like I'm in a funk, I go for a run or I go shoot some hoops. And I think there's some people that just can't get themselves out of that. And I think a lot of children I coach now, and I see the emotions. My son, if he misses a layup or misses a free throw, he looks right over at the bench of me, sometimes has tears in his eyes. And that's too much pressure for kids that are 9 years old and 10 years old. And that's my job as a coach. Don't worry about it. We make mistakes. We miss shots. It's okay. And so, as a coach, as a teacher, as a father, I'm trying to be someone that I needed at a young age. I needed a real strong male role model. I needed someone to tell me that it was okay to be in touch with my feelings. I think too much we tell little boys to suck it up. You know, you're hurt, you're fine, suck it up. Don't talk about it. If something's bothering you, don't talk about it. Just bury it. But I think that's what creates a lot of mental health problems, is burying those issues and not talking about those things. So if I can be a coach, mentor, dad, and open those conversations and let kids know that we can talk. It's okay. Hey, there's Austin. That it's okay to talk about these things, and it's okay to have emotions. It's okay to cry as a man. There's nothing wrong with that. I cry all the time. Good cries, bad cries, but you can't bottle it up. And I've told my son, kind of the example I try to say is that the emotions and feelings we have are like a train coming into a train station. You just can't let it stay in the station too long. You got to, accept it. I'm upset, but then let the train out of the station. And I try to simplify things like that with him as a dad, and really have those conversations with him so he doesn't feel bottled up or that he can't talk to me about those important issues.
It's got to be, and this is short and sweet. And I see through pictures, and I know social media sometimes can be deceiving, but I'm so proud of you, Bomber, when I see pictures of you and your son. Like, you're a dad, buddy.
Yeah, I mean, who would have thought? And I became a dad late in life at 42, and it's pretty incredible and he is, and I kind of joked with you, but he's already a better basketball player than I ever was. He plays for New Horizon U10 rep team. He made the Coalition All-Star team last week and played huge down the stretch. It's just so fun to see him excel at something. And if he was to stop playing basketball tomorrow, I would not care. I just want him to be happy. And, whether it's soccer or another sport, I would love for him to stay involved in sports. But for me, it's about growth. It's about being a part of a team. It's how to, communicate with people. It's how to take direction. All those things that we learn in youth sports are way more important than wins and losses. And I know I'm guilty of it myself. I want to win every time I play. But at the end of the day, if we lose, it's okay. As long as they're doing the right things and being good kids out there, that's kind of more important to me. But being a dad is the best gift ever. I think I didn't have a dad that was around a whole lot. And so for me, I try to be there as much as possible. As you know, and I'm sure people in the control room know, these hours that we work are not always easy. A lot of late nights, a lot of weekends. But the times that I do get to spend with him, I want to make them important and make them memorable every time I'm with him.
I always say that Sportsnet's biggest loss and TSN's biggest gain was hiring the likes of Jack Armstrong. I'm so sad that he's not with Sportsnet anymore, but regardless, he's a wonderful man.
We're still good buddies. We still hang out. Jack is one of the best. He wrote the foreword for the book.
Yeah.
But you're right. I remember being asked early in my career, do we have any stars in our network? And Jack was the first person I said. And the person in leadership at the time disagreed with me. I won't get into who it was. And they said Nick Kyprios was a star. And don't get me wrong, Nick Kyprios was a star, is a star, great friend. But I also think there was room for a basketball star in Jack Armstrong.
Yes.
And I think he's proved me right and whomever that leader was at the time wrong.
Yeah, pretty much. And how'd you get him involved in the book? Because for people that don't know, he's a real special guy, like outside of the sport.
He is, I tell you, if you're a friend with Jack or even a casual acquaintance, you've met one of the best people you'll ever meet in your life. And he's just so genuine, so nice. He adopted 3 boys. I remember the first time going to his house, I was like, whoa, it was just chaos in there. And he's such a great dad, such a loving person. So I just told him about the book. We played in a members guest golf tournament this summer, and I was his guest, and I played terribly. Sorry, Jack. But he ended up asking if he could be a part of the book and write the foreword for me. And I said, absolutely. And then said, if you ever did anything, an animated version of it, I would love to voice. And just, any way he can help a friend, he'll be there for you. And just great advice. I feel like he's a lot older than his years. He knows he's just a wealth of knowledge, and whether it's career, friendship, being a dad, he always has the right thing to say and always just knows how to make you feel great in his presence, and just such a good guy.
He's such a good guy. Hey, any chance of a second book maybe? I mean, you're hot right now, brother.
Oh yeah. Well, it's funny. I never thought I would be in this place, but I do think there's room. Kai, one of the characters in the book, comes from another book called Nothing But Yet, which is about growth mindset. And he picked up a basketball. That's him on the right with the basketball, and he just thought he'd be good at it right away. I think children think instant gratification because you have video games, and your sister's good at basketball. Well, I'll be good too. And he learned that through repetition and hard work, you become good at basketball and any other sport. I think there's a lot of lessons to be learned in the children book kind of genre. And, they're not only for children, they're for adults as well. I think we would like to maybe explore, and I've often said that to Jason, that where Kai is almost like the Forrest Gump, and he keeps meeting different people that have different challenges, not just mental health challenges. Where my character in the book worried all the time, that was the backpack is a metaphor for his worrying about his mom. It's not necessarily all about my mom's illness in the book. It's about my worrying as well. And similar to growing up, I didn't talk about it until one day I could have that conversation. So I think we're exploring, different storylines with the characters in the book that we can, tell some other stories and help create awareness for other issues that may be out there.
Well, you set the stage for, I think, for a second book, and I really, first of all, I can't wait to get that first book and probably have that right here on the set here, because I think it's certainly needed, and that I think that mental aspect, you're right, and I think Bell Let's Talk certainly do have something to do with it. It's normalizing the ability to discuss our feelings and say because it's all so easy to say I am having a great day, but it maybe isn't so easy to say I'm not having a great day.
And
right?
What you'll find is most people that say I'm having a great day, and the people that try to make you laugh in rooms, are often the people that are struggling the most. Robin Williams comes to mind. There's a lot, and I used to be the clown, the class clown, trying to make people laugh, because that's how I dealt with my mom, and I would try to cheer her up and try to make her laugh. And in the newsroom, I was a big clown and a big joker. But I have my bad days, and we all have our bad days, and I just try my best not to let them snowball. But you're right. We do have to be able to talk and have these open conversations. And I think normalizing and, guys like DeMar DeRozan and Kevin Love, who have come out and talked about their challenges in mental health, and two of the best players to play in the last 20 years, and being able to say that they've struggled with the mental aspect of the game, and just opening up and, again, using themselves and being vulnerable helps other people not feel so alone.
You just brought up some guys from the NBA, and this is actually a fun time for basketball and hoop heads like yourself right now. You think about what's going on, the Laval winning their first basketball title recently, the NCAA men's tournament, the NCAA women's tournament is underway, CEBL close to tipping off for yet another season. And then there's this guy by the name of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander from Steeltown. Bummer, like the NBA MVP may be another Canadian. There may be a second Canadian.
I remember Titus Channer telling me about him, because obviously Titus is Hamilton proud. And I had seen him play a little bit, and I hadn't really I think the first time I really watched him was last summer with the national team. And I just could not believe his poise down the stretch. He hit every big shot. But what I've noticed from watching him more this year is you just can't speed him up. He plays at his own pace. He doesn't make a lot of mistakes. He can score at will. He gets to the basket. He hits shots. He uses his teammates, and he plays the right way. And he's just a good guy. Like, you see the scrums they have after the games, he's always joking around with his teammates. They look like they're having a lot of fun. I can't wait till this summer. Hopefully the whole team's healthy, because I think they can make a huge run. But I mean, he's definitely, for me, he's the MVP of the NBA this year. And I would say that, Embiid probably would have been if he didn't get injured. I mean, Jokic is always right there. There's some other players, but what Shai Gilgeous-Alexander has done is incredible. And just his ability, his leadership, like I said, he doesn't get sped up in a game. If you watch him, he goes wherever he wants on the court, and it's fun to watch. And we should all be really proud of how awesome he's played this year.
We had Joe Razzo on, who I know very, very well, a couple of weeks ago, and he said with him and Jamal Murray in the backcourt, that's the best backcourt in the world.
Absolutely. I mean, two of the best guards in the NBA playing on the same team for Canada. And I remember, back in my days, of my best friend in high school and university, William Njoku, was playing with the national team. They were just hoping a guy like Rick Fox would play, like one NBA player who was a good NBA player and but more of a role player. Now we're talking about like rotational players, really good players that might not even make the Canadian national team. And then talking about we have the best backcourt in the world. And really, the way the game's changed now, backcourt controls the games. We have as good a chance as winning a gold medal as any. I know that U.S. team's stacked, but in one game, winner takes all. Anything can happen, and I like our chances with that team.
Let's close on this. I got to get a little prop here, and you tell me what you're thinking here, because I don't know, and I'll just ask you this simple question. Should we still trust in Masai?
Ooh, that's a great question. I think, if I'm being honest, I think Masai was almost loyal to a fault to the core guys that gave him, brought us a championship. Not gave him, but brought us a championship to Toronto. The Fred VanVleets, the Pascal Siakams, OG Anunobys. And I think I admire that in a lot of ways, that he was loyal. And I think that one extra year of loyalty may have stumped their growth a bit. I didn't love the Acapurtle trade last year, but I think moving forward, it's a good piece. And I think what they did at trade deadline this year, you got two really good pieces in Quickly and Barrett. I like Kelly Olynyk on the team, leadership. I think when healthy, Scotty Barnes obviously is a young superstar. I still believe in Masai and Bobby Webster and their vision. And, in hindsight, whatever, I could say, this team did this. You look at every draft, they should have drafted this. But I think what they're doing now, they're on the right path. And, I hope Masai hires me one day, so I don't want to be here trying.
Well, I'll tell you, at the very least, I believe in Bomber. And
you're the best, Bubs.
This is awesome. Like, this podcast form and something we didn't have in our day that we can do right now. And I'm certainly having just a great time doing this Sportsline podcast and getting to reconnect and talk to people like yourself that have become, experts in the field, have done such a bang-up job from where you started from back in the year 2000 to where you are right now. An honor for me, a continued success. I love what you have done in transitioning to, as a man, to a father, and to also helping spread your experience through the backpack. I wish it the most and ultimate success there, Bomber. This is awesome.
You're trying to make me cry. Don't do the Oprah on me here, bud. You know what? I was going to say this before we left, Bub, but you're one of the guys that was a leader in the newsroom. You took every job you did there so seriously. I mean, we were doing game notes. You trained me on game notes. You would think that we were prepping to play in Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final. You were intense. You were a leader. You showed me how to be a professional. Truly, I talk about this. I use your name in the newsroom all the time. That guy was a pro's pro when it came to broadcasting. I know you were behind the scenes for many years wanting to get your dream to be on air, and I was so happy and still so happy that you are on air. You're a voice that's needed. Local news is needed. Local stories matter. And what you guys do there is really important. And love you to death and appreciate your friendship, and also very proud of you.
Well, I can't wait for you, Foley, all the boys to do. We got to hook up real soon this summer. Let's make it happen.
Absolutely, buddy. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Good luck with the book, and look forward to chatting with you soon, folks. All right, my man. That's your Sportsline podcast for the day. And as you've just seen and heard, we love talking to sports people and ones that are making life matter. And that's exactly what Paul Bromby is. I mean, folks, if you do know of an athlete, team, or event to promote, the Sportsline podcast do want to hear from you. Please hit the thumbs up, like, and subscribe button. And if you do have something to say, I want to hear it. Please comment. For the wonderful people, minds, and hands that make the Sportsline podcast possible, thank you so very much. And we'll see you next week.